fly tying video. Today we're going to tie a CdC Winged Parachute. So here I'm going to show a detailed materials list of the fly we're going to tie. If you want to skip this, I leave a timestamp in the description just below, so click that and you will jump right to when I start tying. But here, this fly we're going to tie, the CdC Winged Parachute, is just a slight variant of the normal parachute, or I'm just using some CdC instead of the usual parapost material. This one you will see it a little less on the water, but I like to use natural materials for my flies. Makes them have this nice classic look to them. So here, to start off, what we're going to use is a dry fly hook. Here I'm using the Hends BL 454 in a size 16. The tail is then going to be some Coq de Leon fibers. These are in the color medium Pardo, but depending on what color of the body you want, you would maybe use a light or a darker one. Then the body has a rib, and the rib is some small gold wire. You could also go extra small, but this the extra small I would use maybe for a size 18-20 or so. This size small works well for this size 16. Then the body, the dubbing and the thorax is made of horsehair, natural horsehair. Here you could also substitute this for any dubbing that you like, but I like to have these natural dubbings with a little bit of spikier guard hairs in them. This is going to help with the flotation and also make a nice natural profile to the fly. Then the post, as I said, is made of CdC. This here is a beige CdC feather, or a light tan one. And these feathers that I have are these really short with a lot of fibers on them. So here is what these look like. It's more like a CdC puff, not really, but it has this nice little stem, and the fibers are a little bit different from if I'm taking here one from Marc Petitjean. These ones can be used for many other things, but I would not recommend using these to do the wings on these small flies. As you can see here, the stem is quite wide, and so here if we compare these two, this one from Marc Petitjean is really long and can be used more to use as the hackle, and this one is better to use for wings or posts like these. The thread I'm going to be using throughout this fly is the Nanosilk from Semperfli, the 80-knot in beige, and this is what helps me to keep the profile really slim on this one, also tying off the hackle on the post and then get it to the eye without barely noticing it. Here you can see a little bit of this just because I did not put enough dubbing, but it will blend in with everything really nicely, and it's really strong and secure. And then the last part here is the hackle, and this one is a Whiting's dry fly saddle, and this one is in a light brown and a little bit darker brown color variation, so it works well for all these natural colored, as I call this, natural horsehair, a little bit brownish gray, and this will work really well. So now let's get tying. The hook I'm using is the Hends BL 454. This one is a size 16. I will be getting some better dry fly hooks really soon, I hope. Thread, as always, is the Nanosilk from Semperfli. This one is the 80-knot, and this will help me to keep the profile really slim on this one, and this is exactly what I want. So here I'm going to start the thread just a little bit further down than I usually do, and put down a few turns of thread, then cut off the excess. And here we're going to tie in the wing. This is our first thing to do, and this is going to help with the taper of the fly. And here I'm using some CdC in beige, so it's a light tan color, and these feathers are really small and quite perfect to do like wings. Can be used as a CdC caddis wing like this, or you can use it as a parachute post, and this is what we're going to do this time. And here I'm going to bundle all the fibers and then measure the length, and this is going to be about the length of the hook. And here we have to be a little bit cautious that we don't make this too long, or else the fly will be or have a tendency to ride on its side, and that's exactly the opposite of what we want on these kind of flies. So here, measure out the length to be the right for you, as we're not going to cut off the tips. They have this nice fine taper to them, so we want to leave this on. And then take your thread back a few turns, and here we're going to help the taper of the fly by cutting the ends off at an angle, and then continue down, touching turns. This is going to make for a smooth, nice taper to the fly. Here we can see that it goes up, and then we're going to add the tails. For this I'm using some Coq de Leon. This one is the medium Pardo, and these are really nice stiff fibers with a good marking to them. And I'm going to take about 4 or 5 or so. The idea here is to keep this sparse as well, and we want to have the tips aligned, so bring them 90 degrees from the stem and then tear them off. And then we want to measure this to be the length of the wing or the length of the shank, so I'm just going to transfer this measure to my other hand and then tie it in, and then keep the fibers pointing slightly up. This is going to help with keeping these right in the middle, and here these are just slightly too long, so go back a few turns, then you can pull on these to be the exact length. If you're not happy, you can always go back and change something. And then when we come to the end, what I like to do is take one turn underneath the fibers and then pull really tight. And here we can barely see the thread, but it makes these Coq de Leon fibers or tail fibers just splay out a little bit and stay leveled with the shank. Then we can cut off the excess quite close, and here we can see that this is going to help with the taper of the fly, and we don't have a bump right here. Then on the way up we're going to build up the body with some dubbing and also a rib, and here I have some small gold wire. You could also use some extra small if you have that, but this is not going to add so much weight, but a little bit of this sparkle and segmentation to the body. Then for the dubbing, here I'm going to use some horsehair, natural horsehair, and what I want is to have mostly the underfur, but a few guard hairs won't hurt. And here we want to have this really sparse. You just want to barely cover the thread. So here I'm building up a really thin dubbing noodle, and I'm going to take this up the whole length of the body. So I'm starting right at the back and going up. And we also want to add a slight taper to the fly, so just continue with the taper we had in the underbody, and I'm going to add just a little bit more. And here we have some of these spikier guard hairs sticking out, and this will just add to this nice natural profile to the fly. If you would have a straight body, it will float a little bit less. These will also get stuck in the film or in the surface of the water, and also add a little bit to the bugginess of the pattern. And then I'm going to bring up the wire, and here we want to do open spiral turns, and 4 or 5 should be enough. Then when you reach the thread, we can then put a 90-degree bend to the wire and tie it off. A few turns, then bend and break this away. And now we're going to tie the post, or the thorax and the post. And to do this, I'm going to bring up this CdC feather, and I'm going to make a few turns right in front. This is going to help it stand up a little bit. And then, to make sure that we can add the hackle, I'm going to make a few turns just around the post with the thread. And here this material is not it's not that easy to put on these turns. Just make a few ones right near the bottom, and this is going to really make this stand right up, and also like strangle these fibers so they stay together. And just a few millimeters, or 1 or 2, is what we need. We don't want to overdo this. And then the next step is to add the hackle. And what I'm using here is a Whiting's saddle hackle. So this one is brown, and on the other side it's like a light brown. Has a nice color variation to it. So I'm going to strip off a few of the fibers from the bottom. And then with the dull side facing me, I'm going to strip off a few more on the right side. This is going to help to wind on the hackle the right way. And then I'm going to tie this in right in front of the post. And make sure that it stays on your side, and then I'm going to bring it up 90 degrees from the shank, and I'm going to make a few turns around the post with the hackle as well. And then back down again. And here we have this really nicely tied in and secure. And then we can cut off the stem, or the hackle stem. So cut this off quite close. There we go. And here I had a few fibers sticking out to the front, so I'm just going to tie everything back. And now we're going to build up the thorax before hackling the hackle. So what I'm going to use is the same dubbing as for the body. You could also use a slightly darker one, but this one works well. And the thorax we want to be slightly thicker than the body. So I'm just going to dub on a little bit more, and then start building this up. A few turns right behind, and then go up to the front, and make sure you get a few turns in right in front as well. I'm just going to add a little bit more. And here, remember to keep the fly really sparse. We don't need many materials to make the illusion of a fly. And then I'm going to take the thread up half a turn around the post, and here I'm going to adjust the fly in the vise. And what I'm going to do is to put this facing down. And if I was going to do this without the camera, I would just put my vise in a position so I can tie it like this, but just to show it a little bit better, I'm going to do it this way. And now we have a concave side here and a convex, or we have a dull side and a shiny side, and what I want to do is to have the dull side facing up, and here you can see that this is the wrong way, so you just have to try to move this feather around a little bit to make it start the way you want, and there I got it. And here I'm going to do just 1.5 turn on this, and make sure that you get under the previous turn each time. Or here we have about 2.5 turns, I think, and then we're going to tie this off, bring your hackle straight down or straight to the side, and then a few turns around the post with the thread. And here I'm going to adjust once again. And now we have the hackle tied in, and then what I'm going to do is to bring back all the fibers, bring the thread to the front, and then we can cut off the excess hackle. And then make sure that you bring all these fibers back, and I'm going to build up a quite long head on this one. It's going to be more like a Catskill style parachute, which maybe is a little contradictory, but then make a whip finish, and we can then cut off the thread. But what I mean by the Catskill style is mostly to leave a little bit of bare hook or this slightly longer head on the fly, and this is going to help with tying on the fly once you're at the water. So if you tie it this way, you won't have any problem with a crowded eye. And then I'm going to bring back the hackle fibers that were going the wrong way, and make sure you get the posts standing right up as well. And here we have some adjustments to do, but the fly is almost finished. And here we can see that this hackle is really sparse, a little bit oversized for this fly, but this is just going to help with the flotation. So if we were going to hackle it the classic way out from the stem, we would have to use a lot more hackle to get the same flotation. And here, using only this 1.5, 2 turns, this fly is going to float really well just on this, and also with the coq de lion at the end. And then as a last touch, I'd just like to add a little bit of varnish or glue to the base of the wing. And here you have to use a quite runny one just to get it to soak up a little bit in this CdC and the hackle, but you don't want it to get out in the tips, so this is going to help a little bit with the durability of the fly. So there we have the CdC Winged Parachute. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time, and happy tying!